The dust storm hit without warning, turning the New Mexico sky from brilliant blue to angry ochre in mere minutes. Clara Monroe clutched her infant son tighter against her chest, the thin shawl doing little to protect them from the stinging sand that whipped across the barren landscape. Her feet, wrapped in worn boots that had seen too many miles, stumbled over rocks hidden beneath the shifting earth. "Please, Lord," she whispered, her lips cracked and bleeding from 3 days of walking. Not for me, but for him. The baby Daniel. She'd named him, after the prophet who'd survived the lion's den let out a weak cry that was immediately swallowed by the howling wind. At barely 2 months old, he was all she had left in this world, and she'd die before letting harm come to him. Through the swirling chaos, she spotted it a structure, solid and defiant against nature's fury. A ranch house, its wooden frame weathered but sturdy, with smoke somehow still rising from its chimney despite the gale. Clara forced her legs to move faster, each step a prayer, each breath a plea. Inside the house, Ethan Cole stood at the window, watching the storm rage. His weathered hands gripped a cup of coffee that had long gone cold, his gray eyes tracking the movement of tumbleweeds and debris across his land. At 35, he'd already lived more lives than most men gunslinger, lawman, and now rancher, each identity etched into the lines of his face. "Papa, why's the sky angry?" The small voice belonged to Emily, his 6-year-old daughter, who peered out from behind his legs. Her mother's eyes, that same shade of cornflower blue, looked up at him with innocent curiosity. "Sometimes the earth needs to stretch its muscles, little bird," Ethan replied, his voice rough but gentle. "It'll pass." That's when he saw her, a figure struggling against the wind, bent nearly double but still moving forward with desperate determination. His first instinct was caution. Out here, 60 miles from the nearest town of Redemption Creek, unexpected visitors usually meant trouble. But then he saw how she moved, not like someone running to something, but running from it. The pounding on his door came moments later, urgent and weak all at once. "Emily, go to your room," Ethan ordered, his hand instinctively moving to the Colt .45 hanging by the door. "But Papa..." "Now, little bird." She scampered away, casting worried glances over her shoulder. Ethan waited until he heard her door close before approaching his own. Through the thick wood, he could hear it, a baby's cry, thin and desperate. He opened the door to find a woman collapsed against his doorframe, her dark hair plastered to her face, her dress once blue. He thought now the color of dust and desperation. But it was her eyes that stopped him cold, green as sage after rain. They held a fierce protectiveness that he recognized all too well. "Please," she gasped, her voice barely audible above the storm. "My baby, please." For a heartbeat, Ethan hesitated. He'd built these walls, both wooden and emotional, to keep the world at bay, to protect what little he had left. But then the infant's cry pierced through his defenses, and he saw not a stranger, but a mother fighting for her child's life. "Get inside," he said gruffly, stepping aside. "Quickly now." Clara all but fell through the doorway, her legs finally giving out. Ethan caught her before she hit the floor, surprised by how light she felt despite her tall frame. The baby, wrapped in what looked like every piece of fabric she owned, was pressed between them. "Thank you," she whispered, her eyes fluttering. "Thank you." "Save your breath," Ethan muttered, kicking the door shut against the storm. He half carried, half dragged her to the settee near the fireplace. "You're safe now." But even as he said it, he wondered if it was true. Nothing good came from dust storms in New Mexico. They brought drought, dead cattle, and desperate people. And desperate people, he'd learned, were the most dangerous kind. "Water," Clara managed, her arms still locked around her son. "Please, for him." Ethan moved to the kitchen, his movements efficient despite the turmoil in his chest. When Margaret had died 2 years ago, taking their newborn son with her. He'd sworn off caring. Emily was all he could manage, all his broken heart could protect. Yet here he was, filling a cup with precious water for strangers who'd literally blown in with the wind. "Papa," Emily's voice came from the hallway. "Is someone hurt?" "I told you to stay in your room," Ethan said. But without heat, his daughter had inherited her mother's stubborn streak along with her eyes. "But I heard a baby," Emily protested, patting closer in her bare feet. "Like when Mama had—" She stopped, the memory still too painful for her young heart. That's when she saw them. Clara had managed to unwrap Daniel's face, revealing a shock of dark hair and rosebud lips that moved in search of sustenance. Emily's eyes went wide, and before Ethan could stop her, she was kneeling beside the settee. "He's so small," she breathed, reaching out a tentative finger. "What's his name?" Clara's eyes focused with effort. Despite her exhaustion, she managed a weak smile. "Daniel," she said. "His name is Daniel." "Like from the Bible," Emily said knowingly. "Papa reads me that story. He was brave." "Yes," Clara whispered. "Very brave." Ethan returned with the water, along with some bread and dried beef. He watched warily as Emily chatted with the stranger as if they were old friends, his daughter's loneliness apparent in her eager questions. "Where's your husband?" The question came out harsher than he intended, but it needed asking. A woman alone with an infant in the territories usually meant one of three things: widowhood, abandonment, or scandal. Clara's face shuddered, and she focused on getting Daniel to take a few drops of water from her fingertip. "Gone," she said simply. "Dead." To me, yes. It wasn't an answer, but Ethan recognized the tone. Some wounds were too fresh for strangers to probe. He'd used the same voice when people asked about Margaret. The storm raged for 3 more hours. During that time, Clara regained enough strength to properly nurse Daniel, though she accepted Ethan's offer of his bedroom with obvious reluctance. Emily appointed herself the baby's guardian, sitting outside the door and singing the lullabies her mother had once sung to her. Ethan used the time to think, which was always dangerous. The woman Clara, she'd said her name was, didn't have the look of a working girl, though her clothes were well-mended and practical. Her hands were calloused, but not from farm work. Seamstress, maybe, or laundress. The baby was well cared for despite their obvious travels, clean and fed even if his mother looked half-starved. When the storm finally died, leaving an eerie quiet in its wake, Ethan found himself faced with a decision he didn't want to make. "You can't stay here," he said when Clara emerged, looking somewhat restored but still fragile. "Town's 2 days' ride that way. I can loan you a horse." "Please," Clara interrupted, her chin lifting with surprising strength. "I'm not asking for charity. I can work. I can cook, clean, mend. I can earn our keep. I don't need—" "Your daughter's dress has 3 tears I counted from here. Your curtains need mending. There's enough dust in this house to plant corn." She paused, color rising in her pale cheeks. "I'm sorry. That was rude. You've been nothing but kind." Despite himself, Ethan felt his lips twitch. Margaret would have liked this woman's spirit. "You always this forthright with folks who save you from dust storms." "Only when I'm desperate," Clara admitted. "And I am. Very desperate. But I'm not looking for handouts. Just time. Time to figure out where we go next." "Mama used to make the best cornbread." Emily piped up from behind Ethan. "Do you know how to make cornbread?" Clara's eyes softened. "I do. With honey butter, if you like." "Papa doesn't know how," Emily continued, warming to her subject. "His is always hard as rocks. We use it to scare coyotes away." "Emily Rose Cole," Ethan warned, but there was no real anger in it. His daughter hadn't smiled this much since— "Just a few days," Clara said quietly, "until I can find proper work in town. Please." Ethan looked at her, really looked, saw the fear she was trying to hide, the bone-deep exhaustion, the way she held her son like he was the only thing anchoring her to this earth. He recognized that look, saw it in his own mirror every morning. "There's a room off the kitchen," he heard himself saying. "Used to be for the help, back when this ranch could afford help. It's not much, but it's warm and dry." The relief that flooded Clara's face was almost painful to witness. "Thank you," she breathed. "You won't regret this." But as Ethan watched Emily practically dance around their unexpected guests, chattering about everything from her favorite doll to the best spots to find hawk feathers, he wondered if he already did. He'd built this life to protect what remained of his heart. These walls weren't meant to shelter anyone else. Yet that night, as he heard Clara singing softly to Daniel, the melody mixing with Emily's delighted laughter, something long frozen began to thaw. It terrified him more than any storm ever could. Outside, the dust settled over the New Mexico landscape, revealing a world scoured clean and raw. Change had blown in with the wind, whether Ethan Cole was ready for it or not. And somewhere in the darkness, far from the warm light spilling from the ranch house windows, other forces were stirring. Forces that had driven Clara Monroe to risk everything in a desperate flight across unforgiving lands. But for tonight, there was warmth, shelter, and the first fragile seeds of something that might, if given the chance, grow into hope. The morning sun crept through the kitchen window, painting golden stripes across the worn wooden table where Clara Monroe kneaded dough with practiced hands. 3 weeks had passed since the storm delivered her to Ethan Cole's doorstep, and in that time, she'd transformed his house in ways that unsettled him. "Smells like heaven in here," Emily announced, bouncing into the kitchen with her rag doll tucked under one arm. "Is it cornbread day?" Clara smiled, a genuine expression that reached her green eyes. "Every Saturday, just like I promised. Want to help me check the oven?" Ethan watched from the doorway, unnoticed. The scene was dangerously domestic. Clara's hair pinned up but for a few wayward strands, flour dusting her cheeks, Emily chattering about the calf born yesterday. Even baby Daniel, secured in a makeshift cradle Clara had fashioned from an old crate, gurgled contentedly. This was what he'd feared. Not Clara herself, but what she represented. The warmth seeping back into corners of his house, his life that he'd deliberately left cold. "Morning, Mr. Cole," Clara said without turning around. She'd developed an uncanny ability to sense his presence, like a deer aware of wolves. "Coffee's fresh. Eggs are keeping warm on the stove." "I told you to call me Ethan," he said gruffly, moving to pour himself a cup. "Mr. Cole was my father." "And I told you that wouldn't be proper," Clara replied, sliding the cornbread into the oven. "Especially given our arrangement." Their arrangement. She worked for room and board, nothing more. At least, that's what Ethan told himself during the long nights when he lay awake listening to her footsteps overhead, soothing Daniel through his fussy spells. "Papa, can we go to town today?" Emily asked, syrup already dripping down her chin from the flapjacks Clara had made. "Mrs. Monroe needs fabric for my new dress." "It's Miss Monroe," Clara corrected gently. "And we don't need to trouble your father." "It's no trouble," Ethan interrupted, surprising himself. "We need supplies anyway. The creek's running low. I'll need to dig it deeper before full summer hits." Clara's hands stilled in their work. "Are you certain I know how people can be?" He knew what she meant. A widow traveling with a married man, or worse. An unwed mother in the company of a widower would set tongues wagging faster than a rattlesnake's tail. But Emily needed that dress, and he'd be damned if small-town gossip would deprive his daughter of anything. "Let them talk," he said, draining his coffee. "We leave in an hour." The ride to Redemption Creek took 4 hours under the blazing sun. Clara sat in the wagon bed with the children, fashioning a shade with her shawl while telling Daniel stories about cloud animals. Emily hung on every word, occasionally adding her own embellishments about flying horses and brave princesses. Ethan found himself glancing back more than necessary, watching how Clara's face animated when she spoke, how she included Emily in everything as naturally as breathing. Margaret had been like that, making magic from mundane moments. The thought brought its usual stab of guilt. 2 years wasn't long enough to forget. Yet here he was, noticing another woman's smile. "That one looks like Buttercup," Emily exclaimed, pointing at a cloud. "Remember, Miss Clara, from the story last night." "I see it," Clara agreed. "And look, there's the dragon chasing her." "Papa needs to save her," Emily decided. "He's good at saving people." Ethan's hands tightened on the reins. If only his daughter knew how wrong she was. He hadn't saved Margaret, hadn't saved their son, could barely save himself most days. Redemption Creek appeared like a mirage. Its wooden buildings clustered around a single main street. The church steeple cast a judgmental shadow over everything, and Ethan felt Clara tense as they rolled past. "I'll take Emily to the general store," Clara said quietly. "If you could direct me to the seamstress." "Mrs. Henderson runs the dress shop," Ethan replied. "2 doors down from the bank, but you're coming with us first. Nothing worse than shopping on an empty stomach." He pulled the wagon up to May's boarding house, which served the best meals in town. May Sullivan, a shrewd Irish woman with eyes like a hawk, greeted them at the door. "Ethan Cole, as I live and breathe. And who might this be?" Her gaze swept over Clara and Daniel with professional interest. "Clara Monroe," Ethan said firmly. "She's helping with Emily while I get the ranch sorted." "Is that so?" May's smile didn't reach her eyes. "How fortunate. Table for 4. Then—" The meal passed in relative peace, though Ethan noticed the sideways glances and whispered conversations. Clara kept her eyes down, focusing on helping Emily cut her roasted chicken, but he saw the tension in her shoulders. "Mama used to sit there," Emily announced suddenly, pointing to Clara's chair. "But now you sit there? It's nice." The silence that followed could have choked a horse. Clara's face went pale, then flushed deep red. "Emily," Ethan began, but Clara touched his hand lightly. "It's all right," she said softly. Then, to Emily, "Your mama must have been very special. You're lucky to have such wonderful memories of her." "She was pretty like you," Emily continued, oblivious to the adult undercurrents. "And she smelled nice, like flowers." "Emily, that's enough," Ethan said, his voice rougher than intended. "Finish your meal." His daughter's face fell, and Clara squeezed her small hand. "Tell me about those flowers later," she whispered conspiratorially. "I'd love to hear." After lunch, they separated as planned. Ethan headed to the feed store, but found his business concluded quickly. His feet carried him past the saloon, past the bank, until he stood outside Mrs. Henderson's dress shop. Through the window, he could see Clara holding up fabric while Emily twirled, her face bright with joy. Mrs. Henderson looked distinctly uncomfortable, her narrow face pinched as she spoke to Clara in clipped tones. "It simply wouldn't be appropriate," the older woman was saying as Ethan entered. "A woman in your situation, purchasing such fine material." "My situation," Clara's voice was steady, but Ethan caught the steel underneath. "Unmarried, with a child, taking shelter with a widowed man." Mrs. Henderson sniffed. "I have my reputation to consider." "The lady's money is good as anyone's," Ethan said from the doorway. Both women turned, Clara's face a mix of mortification and relief. Mr. Cole, Mrs. Henderson simpered. "I didn't realize. That is, of course, if you're vouching for her." "I'm vouching for myself," Clara interrupted, chin high. "But if you'd rather not have our business, I'm sure we can make do with flour sacks. Come, Emily." She swept past Ethan, Emily's hand in hers, leaving him to face Mrs. Henderson's flustered protests. He found them outside, Clara blinking rapidly while Emily looked confused. "What's a situation, Miss Clara?" the little girl asked. "Nothing important, sweetheart," Clara managed. "The seamstress in Bitter Springs might be more accommodating," Ethan said quietly. "It's only another hour's ride." Clara shook her head. "We shouldn't have come. I knew how it would be." "How what would be?" Emily demanded. "Why was Mrs. Henderson mean?" Ethan knelt before his daughter. "Sometimes people judge others without knowing their hearts," he said carefully. "It's wrong, but it happens. Like when Tommy Garrett said I was strange for talking to my doll." "Exactly like that." Emily considered this, then slipped her hand into Clara's. "Well, Mrs. Henderson smells like old cheese anyway. We don't need her stupid fabric." "Despite everything," Clara laughed, a surprised, genuine sound that made something twist in Ethan's chest. They made it to Bitter Springs, where the seamstress, a younger woman named Sarah, was delighted for the business. While Clara and Emily selected fabric, Ethan found himself in the adjacent barber shop, half listening to the local gossip. "And staying at the Cole place, they say," one man was saying, "bold as brass, with no ring on her finger." "Ethan Cole's no fool," another replied. "Though a man has needs, especially after losing a wife." "That's enough," Ethan said quietly, but with enough edge that both men paled. "Unless you'd like to discuss my needs personally." His reputation as a former gunslinger still carried weight. The men mumbled apologies and found urgent business elsewhere. The ride home was quieter. Emily dozed against Clara's shoulder, worn out from excitement. Daniel fussed until Clara hummed a lullaby Ethan didn't recognize, something mournful and sweet. "I'm sorry," Clara said suddenly, "for bringing trouble to your door." "You didn't bring anything I wasn't already carrying," Ethan replied. "People have been talking since Margaret died. A man raising a daughter alone isn't natural, they say." "Nothing about survival is natural," Clara murmured. "We do what we must." "Is that what you're doing, surviving?" She was quiet for so long he thought she wouldn't answer. "Then I was, but lately—" She looked down at Emily's sleeping face, then at Daniel, and finally met his eyes. "Lately, I remember what living feels like, and it terrifies me." Ethan understood. The fear of hoping again, of opening doors better left closed. But as the ranch came into view, lit golden by the setting sun, with smoke rising from the chimney Clara had insisted on cleaning, he wondered if some doors opened themselves whether you wanted them to or not. That night, after the children were asleep, he found Clara on the porch, mending one of his shirts by lamplight. "You don't have to do that," he said, settling into the other chair. "I like keeping my hands busy," she replied. "Helps me think." "What about—" She smiled sadly. "About how Emily deserves better than whispers and turned backs because of me. About how you've shown us more kindness than we had any right to expect. About how I wish—" "What?" The word came out rougher than intended. "Nothing. Wishes are dangerous things for women like me." "You're not what they think," Ethan said firmly. "Whatever happened before, whoever Daniel's father was—" "Please." Her voice broke slightly. "Not tonight. Let me pretend a little longer that the past can't find us here." But even as she spoke, Ethan noticed how her eyes darted to the horizon, checking for dust clouds that might herald riders. Whatever had driven Clara Monroe to his door, it wasn't finished with her yet. And despite every warning his scarred heart gave him, Ethan Cole was beginning to realize it wasn't finished with him either. The scent of fresh bread filled the Cole ranch house as autumn painted the New Mexico landscape in shades of gold and rust. Clara pulled another loaf from the oven, her movements practiced and sure after 2 months of residence. Through the window, she watched Ethan teaching Emily to rope fence posts, their laughter carrying on the cool morning air. "Your papa's a patient teacher," Clara murmured to Daniel, who gurgled from his cradle near the warmth of the stove. At 4 months old, he'd grown round and content, his dark eyes following Clara's every movement. The kitchen had become her domain, transformed from a utilitarian space to the heart of the home. Dried herbs hung from the rafters, preserves lined the shelves, and cheerful curtains sewn from the fabric they'd bought in Bitter Springs framed the windows. But it was more than physical changes. The house itself seemed to breathe easier, as if it had been holding its breath since Margaret's passing. "Miss Clara!" Emily burst through the door, cheeks flushed with excitement. "I lassoed the post 3 times. Papa says I'm a natural." "That's wonderful. Sweetheart, wash up now. Breakfast is ready." Ethan followed, hanging his hat on the peg by the door, a simple gesture that had become routine. His eyes met Clara's briefly, a silent communication that had developed between them. These small moments were becoming dangerous. She knew. The way he automatically checked on Daniel each morning, how his hand sometimes lingered when she passed him his coffee, the softness in his eyes when he watched her with Emily. "Smells like heaven in here," he said, unknowingly echoing his daughter's words from weeks before. "Just bread and stew," Clara replied, busying herself with plates to avoid his gaze. "Nothing special." "Everything you do is special," Emily announced, climbing into her chair. "Papa said so yesterday to Mr. Rodriguez." Ethan's ears reddened. "Emily, you did. You said Miss Clara makes this place feel like it should." Ethan finished quietly, his eyes finding Clara's again. "Like home." The word hung between them, heavy with implications. Clara's hands trembled slightly as she served the meal. That evening, after Emily had been tucked in and Daniel settled for the night, Clara found herself alone with Ethan on the porch. It had become their custom, these quiet hours under the stars. Though lately, the silence held more tension than peace. "Full moon tonight," Ethan observed, his voice carrying that rough quality it got when he was working through difficult thoughts. "The harvest moon," Clara replied. "My mother used to say it was nature's way of giving farmers extra light to bring in their crops." "Your mother sounds like she was wise." "She was, until fever took her when I was 15. Clara pulled her shawl tighter. "Father never recovered from losing her. He tried, but grief, it changes a person." "That it does," Ethan agreed softly. They sat in comfortable silence, listening to the night sounds, coyotes in the distance, the whisper of wind through dry grass, the creak of the windmill. Clara was acutely aware of Ethan's presence, the warmth radiating from his solid frame mere inches away. "Can I ask you something?" she ventured. "You can ask, can't promise I'll answer." What was she like, Margaret? Ethan was quiet for so long Clara thought she'd overstepped. Then he leaned back, his face tilted toward the stars. "Gentle," he said finally. "Like spring rain." She could calm a spooked horse with just her voice. Loved to dance, even when there was no music. Used to spin Emily around the kitchen while supper burned. A sad smile touched his lips. I'd complain about the ruined food, but secretly, I loved watching them. She made everything softer somehow. You loved her very much." "I did, do?" He rubbed his face. "That's the hell of it. The love doesn't die with them. It just sits there, like a weight on your chest, with nowhere to go." Clara's hand moved without conscious thought, covering his where it rested on the arm of his chair. "It goes to Emily. Every patient lesson, every bedtime story, every time you make her laugh, that's your love for Margaret. Living on." Ethan turned his hand palm up, his fingers intertwining with hers. "Clara." "I know," she whispered. "I know we can't. I know why this is impossible." "Do you—" She looked at him then. Really looked. In the moonlight, she could see the battle in his eyes, duty warring with desire, past with present, fear with hope. "You're still married to her memory," Clara said gently. "And I'm a woman with secrets you don't want to know. We're just two broken people who happen to find shelter in the same storm. Is that all we are? The question hung between them like a challenge. Clara felt her carefully constructed walls beginning to crack. These past weeks, she'd told herself she was just grateful for sanctuary, that a racing heart when Ethan entered a room was merely nerves. But sitting here, her hand in his, she couldn't lie anymore. No, she admitted, but it's all we can be. Ethan's thumb traced circles on her palm, the simple touch sending shivers through her. What if I don't accept that? Then you're a fool, she said without heat. I won't be the reason you dishonor Margaret's memory, and you deserve better than damaged goods. Don't, his voice turned sharp. Don't talk about yourself that way. It's the truth. I am an unwed mother. Ethan, whatever pretty stories we tell Emily, that's what the world sees. What they'll always see. I don't give a damn what the world sees. You should, for Emily's sake, if not your own. He released her hand abruptly, standing to pace the porch. You think I care more about reputation than the way you've brought life back to this place, the way Emily glows when you're near, the way I... He stopped, running fingers through his hair in frustration. The way you what? Clara's voice was barely above a whisper. He turned to face her, his expression raw. The way I look for excuses to come in from the fields, just to hear your voice. The way I lie awake listening to you sing to Daniel. Wishing, God help me, wishing things I have no right to wish. Clara stood, her legs unsteady. Ethan, please. That night, he continued, stepping closer. The night you asked me to stay. Do you remember? Heat flooded Clara's cheeks. She did remember a moment of weakness 3 nights prior when Daniel's crying had woken the house. Ethan had found her pacing the kitchen, exhausted and overwhelmed. He'd taken the baby, walking and humming until Daniel settled. When he'd handed her son back, their bodies had been so close, the air between them charged with unspoken longing. Stay, she'd whispered, her defenses crumbled by exhaustion and loneliness. Just stay with me. He'd touched her face, so gently she might have imagined it, before stepping back. You don't know what you're asking. I'm asking for one night where I don't feel alone, she'd replied. Where I can pretend I'm not a fallen woman with no right to want. To want what? You, she'd breathed. God forgive me, I want you. He'd left then, fled, really, and they'd never spoken of it. Until now. I remember, Clara said, wrapping her arms around herself. I remember the shame I felt the next morning. Shame! Ethan moved closer still, close enough that she could smell the leather and sage that always clung to him. Clara, look at me. She raised her eyes to his, unprepared for the intensity she found there. The only shame, he said quietly, is that I was too much a coward to give you what you needed, what we both needed. What are you saying? I'm saying that Margaret is gone. She's been gone 2 years, and I've been a ghost just as long. Then you arrived, and suddenly I'm alive again, feeling things I thought were buried with her. He cupped her face in his calloused hands. I'm saying that maybe it's time to stop living in the past. And Daniel, Clara's voice broke. When you learn the truth about his father, when you know what kind of woman I really am. I know exactly what kind of woman you are, Ethan said firmly. You're the woman who faces down dust storms for her child, who stands up to narrow-minded busybodies with more dignity than they deserve, who's shown my daughter what a mother's love looks like again. His thumb brushed away a tear she hadn't realized had fallen. You're the woman I'm falling in love with, despite every damn reason not to. Clara's breath caught. Ethan, tell me you don't feel it too, he challenged. Tell me your heart doesn't race when we pass in the hallway. Tell me you don't imagine what it would be like if things were different. Of course I feel it, she whispered. But feeling and acting are different things. We have children to think of. who are already attached to each other. Emily calls you Mama when she thinks I'm not listening. And Daniel, have you seen how he settles when I hold him like he knows?" "Like he knows what?" Clara asked, though she'd noticed it too. "Like he knows he's safe, like he knows he's home." The word again. Home. Such a simple concept that had become so complicated. "I can't," Clara said, though every fiber of her being screamed otherwise. "Not until you know everything. It wouldn't be fair." "Then tell me," Ethan urged. "Whatever it is, whoever he was, tell me. Let me decide what's fair." Clara searched his face, seeing sincerity mixed with desire, honor warring with need. This was the precipice she'd been afraid of reaching, the moment where truth would either set them free or destroy everything. A coyote howled in the distance, and Daniel stirred inside, breaking the spell. Clara stepped back, Ethan's hands falling away. "Soon," she promised. "When I find the words, when I'm brave enough, I'll tell you everything. And then—" She touched his face briefly, memorizing the feel of stubble against her palm. "Then you can decide if a future is possible for people like us." Ethan caught her hand, pressing a kiss to her palm that sent fire through her veins. "People like us. Broken people," she said softly, "who might just fit together in all the right places." She left him on the porch, knowing that crossing the threshold back into the house was both a retreat and a promise. Inside, she checked on Daniel, then paused at Emily's door. The little girl was sprawled across her bed, one arm flung wide, the other clutching her rag doll. "Sweet dreams, little one," Clara whispered. "Mama," Emily's sleepy voice startled her. "Will you stay forever?" Clara's heart clenched. "Go back to sleep, sweetheart." "But will you—" "For as long as I can," Clara promised, knowing it might not be nearly long enough. Outside, Ethan remained on the porch, staring at the stars and fighting the urge to follow Clara inside. Not to her bed, though God knew he wanted that too, but to her side, where he could protect her from whatever shadows haunted her past. Change was coming. He could feel it in the autumn wind. The question was whether they'd be strong enough to weather it together, or if the secrets Clara carried would tear apart the fragile family they'd begun to build. Only time would tell, and in the Wild West, time had a way of running out when you needed it most. The church bells of Redemption Creek rang out across the valley, their bronze voices calling the faithful to Sunday service. Clara adjusted Daniel's blanket against the October chill, her stomach knotting with each toll. She'd managed to avoid town for weeks, but Emily's pleading to attend the Harvest Festival had finally worn down her defenses. "You look beautiful, Miss Clara," Emily said, twirling in her new blue dress, the one they'd sewn together from the Bitter Springs fabric. "Like a real mama." Clara's heart clenched at the words. "Thank you, sweetheart. You look like an angel yourself." Ethan emerged from his room, clean-shaven and wearing his best shirt, the black one Clara had mended with tiny, careful stitches. He stopped short when he saw her, his gray eyes darkening with something that made her pulse quicken. "You clean up well, Mr. Cole," she managed, keeping her voice light. "Ethan," he corrected automatically, then cleared his throat. "We don't have to do this. If you're not comfortable—" "Emily deserves to go," Clara interrupted, "and hiding only makes the gossip worse." The ride to town tested Clara's resolve. Daniel fussed more than usual. Sensing her tension, Emily chattered excitedly about the festival games and pie contest, blissfully unaware of the storm they were riding toward. They heard the whispers before they saw the faces. Clara kept her eyes forward as Ethan helped her down from the wagon, his hand lingering a moment longer than necessary at her waist. The crowd parted before them like the Red Sea, but with judgment rather than reverence in their eyes. "Steady," Ethan murmured, his hand finding the small of her back. "We're just a family going to church." Family. The word was both a comfort and a lie. Inside the church, Reverend Morrison stood at the pulpit, his weathered face kind but his eyes sharp. They found a pew near the back, or rather, one was vacated for them with pointed looks and rustling skirts. Ethan Cole. A woman's voice cut through the pre-service murmur. How unexpected. Clara turned to see a striking woman in an emerald dress that probably cost more than most families saw in a year. Everything about her screamed wealth and position, from her perfectly coiled auburn hair to her kid leather gloves. "I'm Mrs. Harrington," Ethan replied evenly. "I didn't realize you were back from Denver." Father's health required it. Her gaze slid to Clara like oil on water. "And this must be your help." "Clara Monroe," Ethan said firmly. "Clara, this is Judge Harlan's daughter, Violet Harrington." "Widow Harrington now," Violet corrected, though her black mourning dress had enough jeweled pins to suggest grief hadn't dampened her taste for finery. "How interesting to meet you, Miss Monroe. And is this your child?" The way she emphasized "your" made Clara's skin crawl. "Yes, ma'am. This is Daniel." "Charming." Violet's smile was sharp as glass. "You must tell me sometime how you came to be in Mr. Cole's employment. I do so love a good story." "The service is starting," Ethan interrupted, his jaw tight. Violet's laugh tinkled like broken bells. "Of course. We must observe the proprieties. Mustn't we, even if others don't?" She glided away, leaving Clara feeling stripped bare. Emily, who'd been unusually quiet, tugged on Clara's skirt. "Why was that lady mean to you?" "Hush now," Clara whispered. "Listen to the Reverend." But focusing proved impossible. Throughout the service, Clara felt the weight of dozens of eyes. Every whisper felt aimed at her. Every glance a judgment. When Reverend Morrison began his sermon on the sanctity of marriage and the home, she wondered if it was coincidence or cruelty. Daniel, bless him, chose that moment to begin crying in earnest. Clara tried to soothe him quietly, but his wails only grew louder. "Perhaps you should step outside," a woman in front of them suggested, her tone making it clear this wasn't a kindness. Clara started to rise, but Ethan's hand on her arm stopped her. He took Daniel from her, standing instead. "My fault," he announced to the congregation at large. "The boy's partial to me. We'll just be a moment." He strode out with Daniel, leaving Clara to face the scrutiny alone. Emily pressed closer to her side. "Don't mind them," the little girl whispered fiercely. "They're just jealous 'cause you're prettier." Despite everything, Clara felt a smile tug at her lips. "You're going to get us in trouble, little rebel." After the longest sermon of Clara's life, they escaped to the festival grounds. Ethan rejoined them, Daniel now content and gurgling happily. "He settled right down once we got outside," Ethan said, but Clara caught the tightness around his eyes. He'd heard things, she was sure, things he was protecting her from. The festival itself was a riot of color and activity. Booths selling everything from apple cider to knitted goods lined the main street. Children ran between them, their laughter bright as copper pennies. For a moment, Clara could almost pretend they were just another family enjoying a crisp autumn day. "Papa, can I bob for apples?" Emily asked, bouncing on her toes. "Go on," Ethan said, producing a penny. "But don't ruin your dress." They watched her race off, and Clara felt the temporary peace shatter as more townspeople noticed them. The whispers started again, flowing around them like a poisonous river. "That's her, the one staying at the Cole place." "Bold as brass, bringing her bastard child to church." Poor Ethan. Lonely men make foolish choices. Margaret must be rolling in her grave. That last one hit Ethan like a physical blow. Clara saw his fists clench, the old gunslinger rising to the surface. "Don't," she said quietly, touching his arm. "They're not worth it." "They have no right." "They have every right. This is their town, their church, their rules." Clara shifted Daniel to her other hip, lifting her chin. I knew what I was walking into. "Miss Monroe," a gentle voice interrupted. They turned to find Reverend Morrison, his expression thoughtful rather than condemning. "Reverend," Clara said warily. "I wondered if we might speak privately." He glanced at Ethan. "All of us, Mrs. Morrison has the children at the pie booth. Emily would be welcome to join them." They followed him to the small garden beside the church, where late roses still bloomed despite the season. The Reverend settled on a bench, gesturing for them to join him. "I've heard the talk," he began without preamble. "Probably more than you have, given my position, and I find myself curious about the truth of the matter." "The truth," Clara said carefully, "is that Mr. Cole offered shelter to a woman and child in need. He's been nothing but honorable." "I don't doubt it. Ethan Cole's character has never been in question." The Reverend studied her with eyes that seemed to see too much. "But what of yours? Miss Monroe?" "Reverend Morrison," Ethan started, but the older man raised a hand. "I ask not from judgment, but from concern. This community, it can be unforgiving, but it can also be redemptive, given the chance." He paused. "Are you seeking redemption, young woman?" Clara felt tears prick her eyes. "I'm seeking survival, Reverend, for my son and myself. If redemption comes with that, I'll count it a blessing." "And the boy's father is no longer a factor in our lives," Clara said firmly. "By choice." "By necessity." The Reverend nodded slowly. "I see. And your intentions regarding Mr. Cole and his daughter?" "My intentions," Clara said, finding strength in truth, "are to repay kindness with service, to care for a motherless child who's shown me nothing but love, and to raise my son with dignity despite the circumstances of his birth. If that makes me fallen in the eyes of your congregation, so be it." "What makes you fallen," the Reverend said gently, "is not your past, but your present. Living under the same roof as an unmarried man, regardless of the arrangement, gives the appearance of impropriety." "Then I'll leave," Clara said immediately, though the words felt like swallowing glass. "I won't bring scandal to Ethan's door." "No." Ethan's voice was sharp as a blade. "With all due respect, Reverend, I won't turn out a woman and infant because of gossip. Even if that gossip affects your daughter, her future prospects." Ethan stood abruptly. "Anyone who judge Emily by my choices isn't worth knowing. Now, if you'll excuse us, we have a festival to enjoy." But the festival had lost its charm. They collected Emily, who sensed the change in mood despite their efforts to hide it. The ride home was silent except for Daniel's babbling and Emily's occasional questions about why people kept staring. That evening, after the children were asleep, Clara found Ethan in the barn, attacking a pile of wood with unnecessary violence. "You'll wake the whole county," she said softly. He set down the axe, wiping sweat from his brow despite the cool air. "Better than riding into town and calling out every hypocrite who dared." "Stop!" Clara moved closer, seeing the pain beneath his anger. "This is exactly why I should leave. You're turning yourself inside out, fighting battles that aren't yours to fight." "Aren't they?" He faced her fully, his expression raw. "When did what happens to you stop being my concern?" "When I endangered everything you've built, your reputation, Emily's future." "To hell with reputation." He closed the distance between them, his hands gripping her shoulders. "Do you think I care what Violet Harrington and her ilk think? Do you think their opinion matters more than—" "Then what?" Clara challenged, even as her body betrayed her, swaying toward him. "Then this," he said roughly, and kissed her. It wasn't gentle. 2 months of denial, of careful distances and proper boundaries, exploded in that kiss. Clara made a sound protest or plea. She wasn't sure before her arms wound around his neck, pulling him closer. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Ethan rested his forehead against hers. "Tell me to stop," he said. "Tell me this is wrong, and I'll never touch you again." Clara closed her eyes, memorizing the feel of him, the scent of hay and honest work that clung to his clothes. "I can't. God help me, I can't." "Then marry me." The words hung between them like a gunshot. Clara pulled back, searching his face. "You don't mean that." "I've never meant anything more." His hands cupped her face, thumbs tracing her cheekbones. "Marry me. Make it real, the family we're already building. Give them nothing to gossip about." "Ethan, you don't know." "Then tell me," he urged. "Whatever secret you're carrying, whatever shame you think disqualifies you, tell me. Let me choose with all the facts." Clara looked into his eyes, seeing determination mixed with something deeper, something that terrified and thrilled her in equal measure. "Tomorrow," she whispered. "I'll tell you everything tomorrow, and then we'll see if your proposal stands." He kissed her again, softer this time, a promise rather than a demand. "It will stand, Clara, whatever comes, it will stand." As she walked back to the house, Clara touched her lips, still feeling the burn of his kiss. Tomorrow, the truth would come, but tonight, for just a few more hours. She could pretend that love might be enough to overcome the past that was surely riding toward them, as inexorable as the desert wind. The morning Clara had promised to reveal her truth dawned gray and foreboding, with clouds gathering like witnesses over the horizon. She stood at the kitchen window, watching Ethan work with the horses, memorizing every detail, the way he moved, confident and sure, how he paused to wave at Emily, who was gathering eggs, the gentle way he handled the animals despite his strength. By noon, she might never see him look at her with warmth again. "You're going to wear a hole in that floor," Ethan said from behind her, making her jump. She hadn't heard him enter. "I didn't start the coffee," she said, flustered. "I'm sorry, Clara." He caught her hands, stilling their nervous movement. "Whatever you need to tell me. It won't change what I said last night." "You can't know that." "Then let me prove it." But fate, it seemed, had other plans. The sound of approaching hoofbeats made them both tense. Out here, unexpected visitors rarely brought good news. Ethan moved to the window, his hand instinctively checking the pistol at his hip. "3 riders. Don't recognize the horses." Clara's blood turned to ice. She knew, with the certainty of prey sensing a predator, who had finally found her. "Take Emily and go to your room," Ethan ordered. "Bar the door." "No." Clara's voice was steady despite her terror. "This is my fight. I won't hide behind you." The knock, when it came, was almost polite. Ethan opened the door, his body blocking the entrance. "Gentlemen, something I can help you with." "I certainly hope so." The voice was cultured, pleasant even, but Clara would have recognized it anywhere. "I'm looking for someone. A woman, traveling with an infant." "Lots of women travel with babies," Ethan replied evenly. "You'll need to be more specific." "Of course. How thoughtless of me." The speaker stepped into view, and Clara bit back a gasp. Lucas Tate had always been handsome in the way that made good women make bad choices, tall and lean, with sandy hair that fell just so across his forehead and eyes the color of summer sky. He was dressed like a gentleman now, fine wool coat, silver-headed cane, boots that had never seen real work. But Clara knew the rot beneath the polish. "The woman I'm seeking," Lucas continued, "is about 5'6", dark hair, green eyes, goes by Clara Monroe, though that's not her real name. She's traveling with my son." "Your son?" Ethan's voice was dangerous now. Funny how fathers usually know where their children are. Lucas's smile was all teeth. "Yes, well, there was a misunderstanding. Clara left rather suddenly, taking the boy with her. I've been searching for months. You can imagine my concern." "Papa," Emily appeared in the doorway to her room. "What's happening?" "Go back inside, little bird," Ethan said without taking his eyes off Lucas. But Lucas had seen her. His expression shifted, calculating. "What a lovely child. Yours." "That's none of your concern." "Oh, but children are always my concern." Lucas straightened his cuffs, the picture of respectability. "You see, I'm a changed man. Found religion, you might say, even started a charitable foundation for unwed mothers and their unfortunate offspring, which is why I simply must find Clara and our son, to do right by them. You understand?" The lie was so smooth Clara almost believed it herself. But she knew Lucas's version of charity, knew exactly what kind of foundation he'd built. "I'm here, Lucas." All eyes turned as Clara stepped from behind Ethan. She held Daniel close, her chin high despite the trembling in her limbs. Lucas's face lit up with false delight. "Clara, darling, there you are. And little—" He paused, frowning. "What are you calling him?" "His name is Daniel." "Daniel, biblical. How droll." Lucas moved toward her, but Ethan stepped between them. "That's close enough." "I don't believe we've been properly introduced," Lucas said, though his eyes never left Clara. "Lucas Tate. And you are—" "The man telling you to state your business and move on." Lucas laughed, a sound like breaking crystal. "Oh, I do like you. But I'm afraid my business is with Clara. You see, she took something that belongs to me." "He's not a thing," Clara spat, "and he doesn't belong to you." "Doesn't he?" Lucas produced a paper from his coat. "I have here a signed confession from Miss Monroe, forgive me. Miss Sarah Whitfield admitting to theft of property and breach of contract. Rather damning, really." Ethan took the paper, scanning it quickly. Clara saw his jaw tighten as he read. "She was employed in my household," Lucas explained conversationally. "A maid, young, pretty, ambitious. You know the type. She thought she could trap me into marriage by, well, let's call it strategic affection. When I refused to abandon my fiancée, a lovely girl from a good family, Clara stole several valuable items and fled." "That's not—" Clara started, but Lucas continued over her. "Of course, I could have pursued legal action immediately. But I'm a forgiving man. I understand that passion can make people act irrationally, which is why I'm here with an offer." "An offer?" Ethan's voice was flat. "Come back with me. Clara, quietly. I'll tear up this confession. Provide for the boy properly. You'll have a position in my household, not as a maid. Of course, that would be awkward, but something suitable." "You mean as your mistress?" Clara said bluntly. "Just like before." Lucas's mask slipped for just a moment, revealing something cold and hungry beneath. "Such an ugly word. I prefer companion." "And if she refuses?" Ethan asked. "Then I'll be forced to involve the authorities. Sheriff Thompson in Redemption Creek is a personal friend, as is Judge Harlan. They take a dim view of thieves, especially those who prey on their betters." Lucas smiled apologetically. "Prison is no place for a woman, and the boy would need proper care. My foundation would be happy to take him in." Clara made a sound like a wounded animal. "You can't I?" Lucas stepped closer, ignoring Ethan's warning growl. "Did you really think you could run forever hide out here in the wilderness, playing house with this cowboy? You're mine. Clara, you've been mine since the moment you let me—" The crack of Ethan's fist against Lucas's jaw was deeply satisfying. Lucas stumbled back, his hand going to his face, blood seeping between his fingers. "You'll regret that," Lucas snarled, all pretense of civility gone. "Already worth it," Ethan replied calmly. "Now get off my land." "Your land." Lucas laughed, the sound ugly now. "For how long? I wonder. A few words in the right ears, and you'll find yourself facing charges for harboring a fugitive, assaulting a respected businessman. How long before the bank recalls your loan? before the good people of Redemption Creek decide you're unfit to raise that pretty little girl." Emily made a frightened sound, and Clara felt something snap inside her. "Stop," she said quietly, but with steel beneath. "I'll go with you." "Clara, no," Ethan started. "I won't let you destroy this family." She looked at Emily, memorizing her sweet face. "They don't deserve to suffer for my mistakes." "Mistakes?" Lucas dabbed at his bloody lip with a handkerchief. "Is that what you call our son?" Don't you dare!" "Because I certainly don't. He's leverage, pure and simple." Lucas's smile was terrible now, all pretense abandoned. "Did you really think I'd let you steal my property? You signed a contract. Sarah, 5 years of service in exchange for food and shelter. You still owe me 3. That contract was—" Clara bit off the word, saying it wouldn't matter. Men like Lucas always had the law on their side. Was what legal binding signed by a desperate girl with nowhere else to go? Lucas shrugged. "The courts won't care about the details." "I care," Ethan said quietly. Too quietly. Clara recognized the dangerous calm of a man who'd made his living with a gun. Lucas seemed to sense it too. He took a step back, his hand moving to his coat. "I wouldn't, if I were you. My associates are waiting in town. If I don't return—" "Then you'd better return," Ethan said, empty-handed. "I think not." Lucas's eyes glittered. "Clara, you have 1 hour to pack your things. Don't make me come back with the sheriff." He turned on his heel and strode out, his 2 silent companions falling in behind him. Clara watched them mount up and ride away, her heart sinking with each hoofbeat. "Start talking," Ethan said once they were gone. "The truth this time, all of it." Clara sank into a chair, suddenly exhausted. Daniel fussed in her arms, sensing her distress. "My name is Sarah Whitfield," she began, the words tasting like ashes. "I was 15 when my parents died. No family, no money, no options. Lucas Tate offered me a position in his household. It seemed like salvation. But it wasn't. No, for 2 years, it was manageable. I kept my head down, did my work. Then his fiancée broke their engagement, found him with another maid. Suddenly, he noticed me." She closed her eyes, remembering. "He was charming at first, kind, even said I was different from the others. Special. I was 17 and foolish enough to believe him." "Clara." "He promised marriage, swore he'd make me respectable, and I let him." She couldn't finish, but Ethan understood. His hands clenched into fists. "When I told him about the baby, he laughed, said I should be grateful his other girls hadn't lasted nearly as long. He offered to keep me, set me up in a little house where he could visit when he pleased." Clara's voice turned bitter. "When I refused, he reminded me about the contract, said I'd stolen from him my time, my service, that no court would side with a servant girl who'd tried to trap her betters. So you ran." "I took what I could, some money from his desk, enough to get away. He's probably added theft to my crimes, made it true." She looked up at Ethan, tears streaming. "I'm sorry. I should have told you. Should have left the moment I could walk. But Emily needed, and I was selfish." "Selfish?" Ethan knelt before her, his hands covering hers. "You were surviving. He'll destroy you. Everything you've built. I can't let that happen." "You think I'd let you go with him? Let him take Daniel?" Ethan's voice was fierce. "Over my dead body." "That's what I'm afraid of." Clara touched his face, memorizing it like she had Emily's. "You're a good man, Ethan Cole, the best I've known, which is why I have to go." "No." "You don't understand. Lucas doesn't lose. He has money, connections, judges in his pocket. And I have something he doesn't." "What?" Ethan smiled, sharp and dangerous. "Experience killing men who need killing. And make no mistake, Clara Lucas Tate needs killing." "You can't. You're not that man anymore. You have Emily to think of." I'm thinking of her, of the woman who's become her mother, of the family we're building. He stood. Decision made. Pack what you need. We're leaving. Leaving where would we go? California, Oregon, hell, Canada if we have to. Ethan was already moving, pulling boxes from high shelves. Somewhere Lucas Tate's reach doesn't extend. He'll follow. Let him try. But even as hope bloomed in Clara's chest, she heard it again, hoofbeats. Too soon for Lucas to have returned from town. Unless... He never left, she breathed. He was waiting to see what we'd do. Ethan cursed, moving to the window. 5 riders now, and... His face went grim. That's Sheriff Thompson's badge glinting. Clara's knees nearly buckled. It was over. Lucas had won before the fight even began. Listen to me, Ethan said urgently, gripping her shoulders. Take Emily and Daniel. Go out the back. There's a canyon about 2 miles north. I'm not running. Not anymore. Clara straightened, finding strength she didn't know she had. He wants a fight. Then let's give him one. Clara, do you have a Bible? Ethan... He blinked at the non sequitur. Yes, but... Get it. And your best shirt. A plan was forming. Desperate and probably foolish. But better than surrender. If Lucas Tate wants to play respectable, we'll show him what respectability really looks like. Understanding dawned in Ethan's eyes. Clara Monroe, are you proposing to me? Someone has to, she said, managing a shaky smile. You take too long to act. Despite everything, Ethan laughed. Get the children ready. I'll handle the rest. As the hoofbeats grew closer, Clara held Daniel tight and called for Emily. Whatever came next, they'd face it together. As a family. Lucas Tate thought he held all the cards. But he'd forgotten one thing in the Wild West. Sometimes love was the strongest law of all. Sheriff Thompson stood in the doorway like a man who'd rather be anywhere else, his weathered face showing the strain of conflicting loyalties. Behind him, Lucas Tate smiled with the confidence of a man holding 4 aces, while Judge Harlan himself sat mounted on a fine black mare, his presence turning a simple dispute into an official matter. Ethan, the sheriff said, removing his hat. Sorry to trouble you, but Mr. Tate here has made some serious allegations. Says you're harboring a fugitive. No fugitive here, Tom, Ethan replied calmly. Just my wife and children. The word wife rippled through the group like a stone in still water. Lucas's smile faltered for just a moment. Your wife, Judge Harlan spoke for the first time, his voice carrying the authority of his position. When did this happen? Mr. Cole, I don't recall performing any ceremony. This morning, Ethan said smoothly. Reverend Morrison was kind enough to oblige. You'll find everything properly recorded in the church registry. It was a lie, of course, but one they'd prepared for. The Bible Clara held was Margaret's. The ring on her finger, Ethan's mother's. Hastily retrieved from a drawer, but the intention behind them was real as bedrock. This is ridiculous, Lucas snapped. She can't marry him. She's bound by contract to me. A contract for employment, Clara said, stepping forward with Daniel in her arms. Which I broke. Yes, I'll face those charges. But that doesn't give you claim over my person or my child. Our child, Lucas corrected. Or have you forgotten how he came to be? Clara's cheeks flamed, but she held his gaze. I've forgotten nothing, including your promises, your lies, your threats when I refused to become your kept woman. Careful, Lucas warned. Slander is also a crime. Judge Harlan dismounted, his movements deliberate and measured. At 60, he was still an imposing figure, tall, silver-haired, with eyes like winter ice. His daughter Violet's temperament hadn't come from nowhere. This is a serious matter, the judge said. Mr. Tate has presented documents suggesting theft and breach of contract. These are criminal matters. Then try me, Clara said. "But leave my husband and daughter out of it." "Your daughter," Lucas laughed. "She's no more yours than—" "She's mine in every way that matters," Clara interrupted. "Just as Ethan is Daniel's father now." "Biology suggests otherwise." "Biology doesn't make a father," Ethan said quietly. "Love does. Care does. Being there does. All things you've failed at, Tate." The judge raised a hand for silence. "Enough. This matter requires proper legal examination. Mrs. Cole, is it now you'll need to come to town? There will be a hearing." "When?" Ethan asked. "Tomorrow morning, 10 o'clock sharp." The judge's gaze swept over them all. "Until then, consider yourself under house arrest. Mrs. Cole, Sheriff Thompson will post a man to ensure compliance." "That's not necessary," the sheriff started. "It's entirely necessary." Lucas cut in. "She's already run once." "I had reason to run," Clara said. "Your Honor, if you knew what he—" "Save it for the hearing," Judge Harlan said curtly. "Mr. Tate's reputation speaks for itself, as does yours, I'm afraid." The words stung as intended. Clara felt Ethan tense beside her, ready to defend her honor, but she touched his arm in warning. Angering the judge would only make things worse. "Your Honor!" A new voice called out. Reverend Morrison rode up, slightly out of breath. "I heard there was some trouble out here." "Reverend," the judge acknowledged. "Your timing is fortuitous. Mr. Cole claims you married him to this woman this morning." The Reverend's eyes met Ethan's, then Clara's. A lifetime of silent communication passed between them. "Before God, they made their vows," the Reverend said carefully. "Though I counseled waiting for proper documentation. It wasn't quite a lie, but it wasn't the truth either. The Reverend was walking a narrow line, and they all knew it." "Papers can be drawn up retroactively," Ethan said. "What matters is the commitment." "What matters," Lucas snarled, "is that she's a thief and a—" "Choose your next word very carefully," Ethan warned, his hand moving to his hip. "Enough," Judge Harlan's voice cracked like a whip. "There will be no violence. Sheriff, leave Deputy Morrison here to keep watch. Everyone else, we're done until tomorrow." As the group prepared to leave, Lucas maneuvered his horse close to Clara. "This changes nothing," he said quietly, his voice like honey over poison. "You still belong to me. The boy still belongs to me. And after tomorrow, when you're in a cell, I'll make sure you remember that. Thoroughly." "Mr. Tate," Emily's small voice piped up from the doorway where she'd been watching. "My mama doesn't belong to anybody except herself. That's what Papa says. People aren't property." Lucas's face darkened. "Listen here, you little—" "I'd stop right there," Ethan said, now standing between Lucas and his daughter. "Whatever you were about to say to my child, swallow it, or we'll settle this the old way. Badges and judges be damned." For a moment, violence crackled in the air like heat lightning. Then Lucas wheeled his horse around with a harsh laugh. "Tomorrow, then, we'll see how brave you all are when the law has its say." As the riders departed, leaving only Deputy Morrison behind, the small family gathered in the kitchen. Emily climbed into Clara's lap, careful not to disturb Daniel. "Are they going to take you away?" the little girl asked, her voice small. "Not if I can help it," Clara promised, pressing a kiss to her hair. "We need to prepare," Ethan said, pacing like a caged wolf. "The hearing tomorrow. We'll go exactly as Lucas planned." Clara finished. He wasn't lying about Judge Harlan being in his pocket, and the law is on his side. Then we make our own law. "No." Clara stood, passing Daniel to Emily. "No more violence, no more running. Tomorrow, I'll face whatever comes. But tonight—" She looked around the kitchen, at the home she'd helped build, the family she'd come to love. "Tonight, let's just be together." They tried to make the evening normal. Clara cooked supper while Ethan helped Emily with her letters. They sang songs and told stories, but the deputy's presence outside cast a shadow over everything, a reminder that their time was measured in hours. After the children were asleep, Clara and Ethan sat by the fire, neither willing to waste these last moments on sleep. "I could take Morrison," Ethan said quietly. "We could still run. And teach Emily what that love means, breaking the law that families are built on violence." Clara shook her head. "She deserves better lessons than that. She deserves a mother. She has one, even if—" Clara's voice caught. "Even if I'm not there, she'll remember. You'll help her remember." "Don't talk like that." Ethan pulled her close, his arms strong and desperate. "We'll find a way. There has to be a way." Clara lifted her face to his, memorizing every line, every scar. "Ethan Cole, you've given me something I never thought I'd have. A home, a family, love without conditions or contracts. Whatever happens tomorrow, that's real. That matters." He kissed her then, pouring all his fear and love and determination into the contact. When they broke apart, both were crying. "I love you," he said simply. "Should have said it sooner." "I love you too." "Have since you opened that door in the storm." Clara managed a watery smile. "Terrible timing, both of us." They sat in silence, watching the fire die to embers. Outside, Deputy Morrison kept his lonely vigil, probably wondering how he'd gotten mixed up in such a mess. As dawn approached, Clara made a decision. She rose quietly, penning 2 letters, one for Emily, one for Ethan. Then she went to check on the children one last time. Daniel slept peacefully, unaware of the turmoil surrounding him. She kissed his downy head, breathing in his sweet baby scent. "Be good for your papa," she whispered. "He'll love you, right?" Emily stirred when Clara entered her room. "Mama." "Just checking on you, little bird." "That's what Papa calls me." "I know. You're both our little bird." Clara smoothed her hair. "Emily, whatever happens tomorrow, remember that you're loved. So very loved. You'll be here tomorrow night too, won't you, to check on me?" Clara's throat closed. "If I can be—" "Promise." "I promise to try, and if I can't, your papa will be here. Always." Emily seemed satisfied with this, drifting back to sleep. Clara placed the letter on her nightstand, then returned to the main room where Ethan waited. "Ready?" he asked. "No, but it's time anyway." As the sun rose over the desert, painting the sky in shades of rose and gold, they prepared for the battle ahead. Not with guns or fists, but with truth and dignity and the slim hope that justice might, just this once, align with love. Deputy Morrison straightened as they emerged. "Sorry about all this. Ethan, just doing my job." "I know. Frank, no hard feelings." The deputy looked at Clara, really looked at her, and something shifted in his expression. "My wife, she was in a bad situation once, before we met. Man who thought he owned her just because he had money and she didn't." He adjusted his gun belt unnecessarily. "She got lucky. Found someone who saw her worth. Hope you get lucky too, ma'am." It was more than Clara had expected from any lawman. "Thank you," she managed. The ride to town felt both endless and far too quick. Emily chattered nervously from her perch in front of Ethan, while Clara held Daniel close, memorizing the weight of him, the sound of his breathing. The courthouse came into view far too soon, its windows glinting like accusing eyes in the morning sun. A crowd had already gathered. News traveled fast in Redemption Creek, and a scandal involving Ethan Cole was too juicy to miss. As they dismounted, Clara saw familiar faces in the crowd. Mrs. Henderson, lips pursed in disapproval. May Sullivan from the boarding house, her expression more curious than condemning. And there, standing with her father on the courthouse steps, Violet Harrington in another expensive dress, looking like a cat who'd cornered a particularly interesting mouse. But there were unexpected faces too. Sarah, the young seamstress from Bitter Springs, several of the Mexican families who worked the neighboring ranches, people who knew what it was like to be judged by appearance rather than character. Even Doc Miller, who'd helped when Daniel had colic a few weeks back. Not everyone had come to condemn. Clara realized. Some had come to witness, maybe even to hope. Quite the turnout, Lucas observed, appearing at her elbow. How fitting that everyone will see you exposed for what you really are. Yes, Clara said quietly, her chin rising. Let them see. Let them all see. The truth has a way of surprising people. Mr. Tate, even you. His smile faltered slightly at her calm. He'd expected tears, pleas, desperation, not this quiet dignity. Shall we? Judge Harlan called from the top of the steps. Justice waits for no one. As they climbed toward their fate, Clara felt Ethan's hand find hers, Emily's small fingers gripping her skirt, Daniel's warm weight in her arms. Whatever came next, she wouldn't face it alone. And in the Wild West, sometimes that made all the difference. The courtroom of Redemption Creek had seen its share of drama over the years, but the crowd packed into its wooden benches sensed this would be something different. Judge Harlan took his seat with practiced authority, his gavel falling like destiny. This hearing will determine the validity of certain claims made by Mr. Lucas Tate against Mrs. He paused deliberately. Clara Cole, nee Sarah Whitfield. Mr. Tate, present your case. Lucas rose, every inch the wronged gentleman. Your Honor, the facts are simple. Miss Whitfield was employed in my household under a legal contract. She abandoned her position, stealing both money and valuable items. More importantly, she took my son without permission. Your son, Judge Harlan's eyebrow rose. You claim paternity. I do. The boy was conceived during her employment, while I bear some responsibility for that. It doesn't excuse her criminal actions. Clara felt the crowd's judgment like a physical weight. Beside her, Ethan's jaw worked, his control hanging by a thread. Miss Whitfield, Mrs. Cole, Lucas continued, his voice dripping false regret, was a troubled young woman when I took her in. I offered her honest work, shelter, safety. She repaid my kindness with deception and theft. What items did she allegedly steal? The judge asked. Lucas produced a list. Silver candlesticks, worth $50, a pearl necklace, a family heirloom, various household funds. The total exceeds $200 grand theft, Your Honor. Gasps rippled through the crowd. $200 was more than most families saw in a year. Mrs. Cole. Judge Harlan turned his cold gaze on Clara. How do you answer these charges? Clara stood, her legs surprisingly steady. I took $30 from his desk drawer wages he owed me. Nothing else. She lies, Lucas said smoothly. I have witnesses. Then present them. Lucas gestured, and a thin, nervous woman came forward. Clara recognized her Martha, another maid from the Tate household. Tell the court what you saw. Lucas prompted. Martha's eyes darted between Lucas and Clara. I saw her taking things, the candlesticks, like Mr. Tate said. When was this? Clara asked, surprising everyone by speaking directly to the witness. That is, Martha faltered. Because the candlesticks were sold 3 months before I left. Clara continued calmly. To pay for Mr. Tate's gambling debts. You helped me polish them before the buyer came. Remember. Martha's face crumpled. I'm sorry, she whispered. He said he'd turn me out if I didn't. That's enough, Lucas snapped. This woman is clearly confused. Or coerced, Ethan said, rising. Your Honor, this whole proceeding is a sham. Tate is using the law to reclaim a woman who refused him. Mr. Cole, You're out of order. Judge Harlan warned. Then let me get in order. Ethan faced the crowd. Everyone here knows me. Knows I don't lie, don't cheat, don't suffer fools. So hear me now, Clara Monroe is the finest woman I've known since my Margaret died. Whatever happened in her past, whoever she was before, the woman I married is honest, kind, and good. Pretty words. Lucas drawled. But the law. The law should protect the innocent, not enable predators. Clara's voice rang clear. Yes, I broke a contract. Yes, I took money. But that contract was signed by a desperate girl with no options, and the money was owed to me for 2 years of unpaid labor. You were provided room and board. I was provided a locked room and promises. Clara's chin lifted. Promises that turned to threats when I refused to become your mistress. The crowd murmured. This was the heart of it, laid bare. Careful, Lucas warned. Slander. Truth isn't slander. Clara turned to Judge Harlan. Your Honor, I'll return the $30. I'll face whatever penalty you deem fit for breaking the contract, but I will not return to his household, and I will not give him my son. Our son, Lucas insisted. A son you didn't want until I refused you. Clara shot back. Where was your paternal concern when you told me to handle it quietly, when you offered me money to disappear? Lies, Lucas said, but his smooth facade was cracking. Your Honor. A new voice interrupted. Doc Miller stood in the gallery. Might I speak to the character of Mrs. Cole? Judge Harlan frowned. This isn't a character trial, Doctor. No, sir, but it bears on the matter at hand. The doctor came forward. I've treated the infant in question. He's healthy, well-loved, thriving. In my medical opinion, removing him from Mrs. Cole's care would be detrimental. The child's welfare isn't in question, Lucas said tightly. Isn't it? Sarah, the seamstress, stood next. I've seen how you treat children. Mr. Tate, my cousin, worked in your house. She had to leave sudden-like when your attention got too friendly. She was 14. The accusation hung in the air like gun smoke. Lucas's face flushed. These are baseless accusations. Are they? Another woman stood. My sister. And my daughter. Enough. Judge Harlan's gavel cracked down. This is descending into chaos. Let them speak, Reverend Morrison said quietly from his seat. If we're determining fitness, shouldn't all truth be heard? The judge's eyes narrowed. Reverend, you've already stretched truth regarding this supposed marriage. I've stretched nothing before God and these witnesses. I ask who shows Christian charity, the man using law as a weapon, or the woman who risked everything to protect her child? The law is clear, Judge Harlan began. Your Honor. Violet Harrington rose gracefully. Might I add something? The judge's expression softened slightly at his daughter's intervention. Of course, my dear. Violet glided forward, every eye following. Clara braced herself for the killing blow. I've observed both parties, Violet began, her cultured voice carrying easily, and I must say, she paused dramatically, that any man who pursues a woman this relentlessly after she's clearly refused him is no gentleman. Gasps echoed through the courtroom. Judge Harlan looked stunned. Violet, what are you? Father, we both know Mr. Tate's reputation. Violet's smile was sharp as a blade. We've heard the whispers, ignored the rumors, but seeing him here, watching him use our court to hunt a woman like prey, it's distasteful. You're letting emotion cloud judgment, Lucas said coldly. Am I? Violet turned to him. Then let's speak without emotion. You claim theft. Where's your proof beyond a coerced witness? You claim paternity. Where's your concern for the child's welfare? You claim contract violations. Where's evidence the contract was fair to begin with? The contract is legal. Legal and right aren't always the same, Violet said. She looked at her father. You taught me that, remember? Judge Harlan sat silent, conflict clear on his face. The courtroom held its breath. That's when the shot rang out. The window behind Clara exploded in a shower of glass. She instinctively threw herself over Daniel as Ethan shoved both her and Emily to the floor. "Everyone down," Sheriff Thompson shouted, his gun already drawn. A second shot fired, this one splintering the judge's bench. In the chaos, Clara saw Lucas reaching into his coat not for cover, but for something else. "He's got a gun!" someone screamed. Ethan moved faster than thought, crossing the space between them in 2 strides. His fist connected with Lucas's jaw just as the man drew a derringer. The small gun flew from Lucas's hand, skittering across the floor. Emily, brave little Emily, darted out and kicked it toward the sheriff. "Hands where I can see them. Tate," Sheriff Thompson commanded. But Lucas had other plans. He lunged for Clara, madness in his eyes. "If I can't have you." The sheriff's gun spoke once. Lucas stumbled, clutching his shoulder, blood seeping between his fingers. "Stay down," Thompson warned. "Next one won't be so friendly." As suddenly as it began, the violence ended. Lucas lay groaning on the floor while Doc Miller rushed to tend the wound professional despite his obvious distaste. "Is everyone all right?" Judge Harlan asked, shaken from his usual composure. "We're fine," Ethan said, helping Clara and the children up. "But I think we know who arranged those shots." All eyes turned to Lucas, who managed a bloody smile. "Prove it." "Don't need to," Sheriff Thompson said grimly. "Assault in my presence is enough. Lucas Tate, you're under arrest." "This isn't over," Lucas snarled as the sheriff hauled him up. "That boy is mine by rights. The law." "The law," Judge Harlan interrupted, his voice hard, "has seen enough." He looked at Clara, something like respect in his eyes. "Mrs. Cole, given the circumstances and testimony presented, I'm dismissing all charges against you." The courtroom erupted in cheers and applause. Clara sagged against Ethan, relief making her knees weak. "Furthermore," the judge continued once order was restored, "any claims, Mr. Tate might have regarding the child are hereby severed. A man who would orchestrate violence in a courtroom has no business raising a child." "Thank you," Clara whispered. Judge Harlan's expression softened fractionally. "Thank my daughter. She reminded me that wearing these robes means protecting the vulnerable, not enabling the powerful." Violet caught Clara's eye and winked a gesture so unexpected Clara almost laughed. As Lucas was dragged away, still spewing threats and curses, the crowd began to disperse. Many stopped to offer congratulations or apologies for misjudging. Even Mrs. Henderson managed a tight nod of acknowledgement. Outside, in the clean air and sunshine, Emily tugged on Clara's skirt. "Does this mean you can stay forever now?" Clara knelt, gathering both children close. "Yes, little bird, forever." "Good," Emily said matter-of-factly. "'Cause I already told everyone at school you're my mama. It would be embarrassing if you left." Despite everything, Clara laughed real, free laughter that felt like coming home. "There's still the matter of making this marriage legal," Reverend Morrison said, approaching with a smile. "Shall we say tomorrow? Give folks time to do this proper?" "Tomorrow," Ethan agreed, his arm around Clara. "Though, as far as I'm concerned, it's been real since the day she walked through my door." As they prepared to leave, Violet Harrington approached, up close. Clara could see the sadness beneath the society polish. "Why?" Clara asked simply. Violet glanced toward her father. "Because I know what it's like to be trapped by expectation, to have men decide your worth and your future." Her smile was brittle. "My husband was much like Lucas Charming until he owned me. You had the courage to run. I only found mine in widowhood." "It's never too late to start over," Clara said gently. "Perhaps not." Violet straightened her gloves. You'll need witnesses tomorrow. Might I? That is, would you mind if I attended? Clara felt Ethan's surprise, but answered without hesitation. We'd be honored. As they rode home, Emily chattering about wedding plans while Daniel gurgled happily, Clara marveled at the turn of events. She'd walked into that courtroom prepared to lose everything. Instead, she'd gained more than she'd dreamed possible, not just freedom, but acceptance. Not just safety, but family. You all right? Ethan asked quietly. More than all right. Clara leaned into his strength. Though I could do without being shot at again. I'll see what I can do. He pressed a kiss to her temple. No promises, though. You do seem to attract trouble. Lucky for me, Clara said. I also attracted a hero. No hero, Ethan corrected. Just a man who knows treasure when he finds it. As the ranch came into view, their home golden in the afternoon light, Clara felt the last of her fear dissolve. Lucas Tate was gone. The law was satisfied. And tomorrow she'd marry Ethan properly in front of the whole town. Sometimes, she thought, justice came in unexpected packages. And sometimes, just sometimes, love really was stronger than law. The Wild West had given her its worst poverty, desperation, men who saw her as property, but it had also given her its best freedom, family, and a future built on something stronger than contracts or conventions. Built on love, pure and simple, and that, Clara knew, was worth fighting for. The morning of the wedding dawned clear and bright, as if the desert itself had dressed for the occasion. Clara stood before the small mirror in what was now officially her room, hands trembling slightly as she pinned up her hair. The dress she wore was simple, her best blue cotton, freshly pressed, but Violet Harrington had surprised everyone by arriving at dawn with a delicate lace veil. Something borrowed, Violet had said simply, her eyes soft with understanding. My mother wore it. I think she would have liked you. Now, as Clara adjusted the veil, she marveled at how much had changed in mere days. Through the window, she could see townsfolk arriving far more than she'd expected. Word had spread about the courtroom drama, and it seemed half of Redemption Creek wanted to witness the proper union of Ethan Cole and the woman who'd stood up to Lucas Tate. Mama Clara. Emily burst through the door, resplendent in her new dress, clutching a bouquet of desert wildflowers. Look what Mrs. Rodriguez brought. She says they're lucky. They're beautiful, sweetheart. Clara knelt to straighten Emily's ribbon. Just like you. Papa's nervous, Emily reported with 6-year-old authority. He keeps checking his watch and fixing his tie. Mr. Morrison had to tell him to stop pacing. Clara smiled. The thought of steady, solid Ethan being nervous made her own butterflies settle slightly. They were in this together. After all, a soft knock interrupted her thoughts. Sarah, the seamstress from Bitter Springs, peered around the door. Everyone's ready when you are. Clara, and might I say, you look radiant. Clara took a deep breath, gathering Daniel from his cradle. At 5 months old, he seemed to sense the importance of the day, gurgling happily in his finest gown, another gift from the surprising network of women who'd rallied around them. The walk to the churchyard seemed both endless and far too short. Clara had expected to make it alone, but Doc Miller appeared at her elbow, offering his arm with gruff kindness. Figure someone should give you away, proper-like, he muttered. If you'll have me. I'd be honored. Clara managed past the lump in her throat. The crowd parted as they approached, and Clara's breath caught. The churchyard had been transformed. Ribbons fluttered from every post. Late-blooming roses gathered from God knew where created an archway, and what looked like every able-bodied person in 50 miles had gathered to witness. But Clara had eyes only for Ethan. He stood beneath the flower arch, his Sunday best immaculate, his gray eyes fixed on her with an intensity that made her knees weak. Beside him, Sheriff Thompson served as best man, having insisted it was the least he could do after making a hash of things before. Reverend Morrison beamed as Clara reached Ethan's side. "Dearly beloved," he began, his voice carrying across the crowd, "we gather today not just to witness a union, but to celebrate a triumph. Love over law, hope over hardship. Family formed not by blood alone, but by choice and commitment." Clara handed Daniel to Violet, who'd positioned herself as unofficial matron of honor, then took Ethan's hands. They were steady and warm, calloused from honest work, gentle despite their strength. "Ethan Cole," the Reverend continued, "do you take this woman, Clara Monroe, to be your lawfully wedded wife, to have and to hold, in sickness and health, in plenty and in want, as long as you both shall live?" "I do," Ethan said, his voice rough with emotion. "Today and every day after. Clara Monroe, do you take this man, Ethan Cole, to be your lawfully wedded husband, to have and to hold, in sickness and health, in plenty and in want, as long as you both shall live?" "I do," Clara whispered, then stronger. "I do." "The rings." Emily stepped forward importantly, presenting the simple gold bands they'd purchased in Bitter Springs. As Ethan slipped the ring onto Clara's finger, he spoke the words that would echo in her heart forever. "With this ring, I thee wed. Not just you, Clara, but all of you, your past that brought you to me, your present that fills my days with light, your future that I promise to protect and cherish. You came to us in a storm, and you became our shelter." Clara's hands shook as she placed the ring on Ethan's finger. "With this ring, I thee wed. You gave me sanctuary when I had none, hope when I'd lost it all, love when I thought I didn't deserve it. You saw not what I was, but who I could be. You and Emily didn't just give me a home, you became my home. By the power vested in me by God and the territory of New Mexico," Reverend Morrison declared, his own eyes suspiciously moist, "I now pronounce you husband and wife. Ethan, you may kiss your bride." The kiss was everything their first had been: passionate, promising, powerful, but tempered now with joy instead of desperation. The crowd erupted in cheers, and Clara thought she even saw Mrs. Henderson dabbing at her eyes. "Ladies and gentlemen," the Reverend announced with obvious pleasure, "I present to you Mr. and Mrs. Ethan Cole." The celebration that followed was unlike anything Redemption Creek had seen. Tables groaned under the weight of food contributed by neighbors. Mexican families brought tamales and rice. The German settlers contributed sausages and sauerkraut, and enough pies appeared to feed an army. "Did you plan all this?" Clara asked Violet, who was managing the food tables with military precision. "Hardly," Violet replied with her new, softer smile. "This is what happens when a community decides to claim you. You're one of us now, Clara Cole, for better or worse." As the sun tracked across the sky, Clara watched the celebration unfold with wonder. Ethan danced with Emily, lifting her high and making her squeal with delight. Doc Miller had produced a fiddle from somewhere and was leading a raucous reel. Even baby Daniel was passed from arm to arm, cooed over and celebrated as the newest official member of the Cole family. "Happy?" Ethan asked, appearing at her side as evening approached. "Beyond words," Clara admitted. "I keep waiting to wake up, to find this is all a dream." "If it is, we're dreaming it together." He pulled her into his arms for another dance, this one slow and sweet. "No more running, Clara. No more looking over your shoulder. You're safe now." "We're safe," Clara corrected, resting her head on his shoulder. "All of us." As if summoned by her words, Emily appeared, tugging on Ethan's coat. "Papa, Mama, it's time for the toast. Sheriff Thompson says he has something important to say." They followed their daughter to where the sheriff stood on a makeshift platform, raising a glass of May Sullivan's best elderberry wine. "Folks, I've been lawman in these parts for 15 years. Thompson began. Seen a lot of things. Some good, some bad, But what I witnessed this week reminded me why we have law in the first place, not to serve the powerful, but to protect the innocent. Murmurs of agreement rippled through the crowd. To the Coles, the sheriff continued, raising his glass higher. May their family grow in love and prosperity. May their home be a haven. And may we all remember that sometimes the greatest courage isn't in drawing a gun. It's in opening a door to someone in need. To the Coles, the crowd echoed, glasses raised. But the sheriff wasn't finished. And one more thing. Got a telegram this afternoon. Seems Mr. Lucas Tate met with an unfortunate accident while being transferred to the territorial prison. Fell off his horse, broke his neck. Tragic thing. A hush fell over the crowd. Clara felt Ethan's arm tighten around her. Real tragic, the sheriff repeated, his face carefully neutral. Deputy Morrison was escorting him. Says Tate was trying to escape. Horse spooked. These things happen on dangerous roads. Clara met Deputy Morrison's eyes across the crowd. He touched his hat brim slightly. And she understood. Justice came in many forms in the Wild West. Some official, some less so, but justice nonetheless. The past is buried, Ethan murmured in her ear. All of it. As night fell and lanterns were lit, the celebration gradually wound down. Families drifted away with well wishes and promises to visit. Violet Harrington surprised everyone by embracing Clara before departing. Thank you, Clara whispered. Thank yourself. Violet replied, You showed us all what courage looks like. Perhaps some of us needed that reminder. She glanced toward the church where her father stood. Change comes slowly to places like this, but it does come. Finally, as the stars emerged in their full glory, the Cole family made their way home. Emily had fallen asleep in the wagon, Daniel peaceful in his basket, leaving Ethan and Clara to drive in companionable silence. No regrets, Clara asked as their ranch came into view. Only one. Ethan replied, That I didn't marry you the day you arrived. Clara laughed, the sound bright as starlight. I was rather a mess that day, if you recall. You were perfect, Ethan corrected. Storm-tossed and fierce and perfect, my Clara. As they pulled up to the house, their house, Clara saw that someone had been there before them. Lanterns glowed in every window, and flowers adorned the porch rails. A sign hung on the door, Welcome home, Mrs. Cole. The ladies from church, Ethan explained, grinning at her amazement. Said it was tradition to warm a wedding house. Inside, they found more surprises. The pantry stocked with preserves, new curtains at the windows, a quilt on their bed embroidered with both their initials. The community that had once judged her had embraced her completely. After tucking in the children, their children Clara and Ethan stood on the porch, looking out at the land that stretched endlessly under the star-drunk sky. 18 months ago, I was just trying to survive. Clara mused, living day to day, afraid to hope for anything better. And now I have everything I never dared dream of. A husband who loves me, children who call me Mama, a home that's truly mine. She turned to face him. Sometimes I think my heart might burst from the fullness of it. Ethan drew her close, resting his chin on her head. This is just the beginning. Clara, we've got years ahead of us. Good years, hard years, everything in between, but we'll face them together. Together, Clara agreed, the word a promise and a prayer. As they stood there, wrapped in each other and the desert night, Clara thought about the journey that had brought her here, the desperate flight across unforgiving lands, the storm that drove her to Ethan's door, the battles fought in courtrooms and hearts alike. She'd come to the Wild West as Sarah Whitfield, fallen and afraid. She'd survived as Clara Monroe, fighting for her child and her dignity. But here, now, she was simply Clara Cole, wife, mother, and finally home. The coyotes called in the distance. The windmill creaked its familiar song. And somewhere in the house, Daniel stirred and settled. Life in the territories would never be easy. There would be droughts and storms, hardships and heartaches. But there would also be love. Love that had grown from desperation to hope to certainty. Love that had faced down prejudice and danger and emerged stronger. Love that built families from broken pieces and homes from empty houses. As Ethan led her inside, to the bed they would share as husband and wife, Clara sent up a prayer of gratitude. For second chances and stubborn men, for brave little girls and innocent babies, for communities that could change and women who could stand strong. Most of all, for love that could bloom even in the harshest ground. Proving that sometimes the Wild West's greatest treasures weren't gold or silver, but the families forged in its unforgiving crucible. The desert wind whispered around their home, carrying the scent of sage and promise, and in that modest ranch house, two hearts that had known loss learned to trust in love again, writing a new chapter in the endless story of the American frontier. Their tale would be told in years to come, passed down like precious water in a parched land. How a desperate woman found sanctuary with a grieving man. How a motherless child gained a mother's love. How a fatherless babe found a father's protection. How love conquered law and hope defeated hardship. But tonight, in the gentle glow of lamplight, it was simply their truth, hard-won, precious, and absolutely real. The Wild West had tested them with its worst and rewarded them with its best. And as Clara Cole closed her eyes in her husband's arms, she knew that whatever tomorrow brought, they would meet it as they had met everything else. Together, always together. Home at last. Thank you so much for listening to this story. I'd love to know where you're tuning in from. Please share in the comments below where you're listening and what you thought of Clara and Ethan's journey. Don't forget to subscribe to Wild West Night for more tales from the American frontier. And if this story touched your heart, please hit that like button and the hype button to help more people discover these stories of love, courage, and redemption in the Old West. Your support means everything, and I can't wait to share the next adventure with you.